Hello and welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host and subconscious reprogramming coach, Allison K. Dagny. Are you someone who finds yourself juggling a lot of roles and responsibilities, maybe struggling to keep up with the demands of your daily life? Do you ever feel like that you're constantly treading water, barely able to catch your breath among the whirlwind of all these different tasks and expectations that other people have or you have for yourself? Maybe you're a mom trying to balance the needs of your kids, your career, your own well-being, all while dealing with this pressure to excel in lots of areas of your life. Or maybe you're a professional. Maybe you're navigating the complexities of the workplace where boundaries between work and home and life really get blurred, and there's this never-ending stream of emails and meetings and deadlines and pressure to perform while you're climbing the ladder and trying to prove that you're good enough or that you can achieve these things. This can feel very overwhelming, leaving you really on the edge of burnout. Or maybe you're a caregiver. Maybe you're somebody who's responsible for your aging parents or loved ones with health challenges, right? The emotional weight of seeing people who you care for struggle, paired with lots of logistical challenges, right? Managing their care, getting people places back and forth, making meals, doctor's appointments, right? Can leave you feeling drained and depleted, and really just wondering how you're going to find the strength to keep going. If any of these scenarios are resonating with you, you're not alone. Maybe you're someone who has an ex in your life who's constantly dragging you to court, constantly talking about you to other people or to your children, and you're just trying to keep your head above water. Well, in today's world, women are often expected to wear so many different hats, excel in every single role that they take on. But what happens when the weight of these expectations becomes too much to bear? What then? That's where overwhelm creeps in, right? And it casts this dark shadow over our lives, making it difficult for us to see a way forward. But in today's episode, right, this is what we're going to talk about. Overwhelm is not this fate, this inevitable outcome, right? It's a mental construct, and it's often fueled by our own thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions. And the good news is that we have the power to actually break this down and dismantle it. In this episode, what I'm going to do is help you explore the root causes of overwhelm and debunk the myth that it's simply a product of our circumstances. And we're going to talk about practical strategies for combating overwhelm and helping you to reclaim control of your mental well-being. So, if you are sitting at home, get cozy, grab a tea or a coffee or a glass of wine or whatever your beverage of choice is. Take a deep breath and let's get into the world of overwhelm and discover how to come out stronger on the other side. Okay, so the reason I wanted to write this episode and deliver it to you is because I had a client who I worked with for my 12-week program, and she had such great results that after that 12-week program together, she decided to become a coach. I've had several of these clients become coaches afterwards, and this one in particular had signed up for her training to become a coach and had gone through several modules of her training and messaged me because she was feeling really overwhelmed. She already had a full-time job. She was trying to become certified so that she could be her own boss and work for herself and become a coach to help other people who are dealing with issues like that she had gone through. And everything just became super overwhelming for her in that moment. And so I'm no longer her coach, but we still are friends beyond, and I'm friends with so many of my clients beyond our coaching experience together. And I was messaging with her and talking to her about the overwhelm. And so as we got to chatting about it, I realized this is probably something that a lot of people experience and that it could be helpful for you. So if you can take some notes, it might be helpful. If not, then, just listen along and take some mental notes, and you can come back to this at any point in time. So, I talked about before, there's a lot of different ways that women are experiencing challenges when it comes to their lives, all the different roles and responsibilities. And I'm sure you could relate to some, maybe many, or a few of the ones that I mentioned at the beginning. But as I said before, overwhelm is oftentimes a mental construct that's shaped by our perceptions, our beliefs, and our conditioning from the world. And so when you know that, then that really can empower you to change it. Because here's the thing. If you are feeling overwhelmed and you have a lot of different things that are happening and a lot of different responsibilities that's on your plate, and overwhelm creeps in, often you will freeze. I've been overwhelmed before so much that I've had a panic attack. And maybe you can relate to this, and this has happened to you as well. But the panic attack and the freeze response and things that happen when you feel overwhelmed that are negative responses to the overwhelm happen inside your mind first, right? Because what's happening is all these external circumstances and all these expectations are going on outside of you, but you are making meaning out of it and you are processing it on an internal level. So when you think about it as far as it being a state of being, right, in your mind, that means you can actually take some control over it, right? If you're feeling emotionally overloaded because people are expecting a lot of you, or if there are just too many things that you have to do or too many responsibilities and it just doesn't seem like there's enough time to get it all done, you may feel this, right, like inside of you in an emotional way, where that's why, like, someone like me, when I had a panic attack, this was years ago, was because it was like filling up a cup with water and just filling it and never stopping. And then eventually it just starts spilling over. And oftentimes for especially women, and that's who I could speak for because I am a woman, is how these like societal expectations and personal beliefs can actually contribute to the experience of overwhelm, okay? And I'm going to give you tips and tools on how to process this. So the subconscious mind, as I've talked to you many, many times before, and the conditioning and programming that you've experienced really plays a significant role in amplifying your perceived overwhelm if you are experiencing overwhelm, right? So if, let's say as a child, you had a lot of things that you had to do, like chores and school or this or that or the other, right? And let's say that your mother or your father or your caregiver was really anxious and had a lot of anxiety. A lot of times that could be put onto you. Let's say a guest was coming to the house and your mother started like panic cleaning, right? We've got to clean the house. Hurry up. Get this. Get your room clean. Blah, 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 right? And everybody's stressed out and everybody's like high strung because mom is freaking out because the house isn't clean and somebody's coming over to visit, right? Well, that actual behavior and that experience can shape your perception of reality. It can shape your belief systems, and it can shape how you're conditioned to be as an adult. You may carry beliefs around that everything has to happen all at once, or that there's no time to do anything. We have to do everything right now, right? So do you see how just depending on how you perceived it as a child, and you may not even have realized what those beliefs were that you adopted, that actually contributes to how you see the world and how you will process different external circumstances that could create a sense of overwhelm for you. The other thing is that I want to mention is how different cultural norms and like upbringings really can affect and influence our response to stressors as well, right? So in different cultures and different upbringings, there are so many different ways that this could present itself, where you could be extremely stressed out about a situation, or it might be like absolutely a giant nothing to you. For instance, if your parents were, let's say your parents were very relaxed about manners and your behavior around your family, like your extended family, grandparents and stuff like that. you probably wouldn't get stressed or overwhelmed based on your parents' reactions to how you were behaving. So let's say that you put your elbows on the table or whatever. Like if your parents really weren't that strict about it, chances are you wouldn't get highly overwhelmed because you weren't making meaning out of those things. So overwhelm, again, is not only just about your external circumstances, but it's also about how you are feeling emotionally based on what you believe and how your behavior is being created by the beliefs that you carry. So, what you want to do here is to deconstruct the overwhelm. And I often talk to my clients about this. So, you understand what overwhelm is, how it starts, right? It's a subconscious thing, it's a mental construct. But if you think about, this is how I talk to my clients about it. If you think about being in an ocean, right? You're in the ocean and you're looking around, and let's say that there are floaty toys and beach balls, and there are, I don't know, like a boat and people, and there's all kinds of things around it. And when you're looking around, it all around you, it seems like there is like so many things. And what if I told you have to collect all those things and get a hold of them and then get them to the beach, right? You have to swim out, or you're in it, but you have to swim over to grab the things and then move it to the beach. Well, that might feel extremely overwhelming, right? Because you have like all these things that you have to do, and it's like, oh my goodness, like I'm seeing them. But if you were to be up in a helicopter and looking down, you would see that there's only like 4 or 5 things surrounding you. And it doesn't seem as overwhelming when you kind of pan out and you look at it from a different perspective. But when you're there and things are bobbing around you and floating around, it's like you're thinking, oh my goodness, like I'm at the same level of this stuff, and now I've got to find a way to collect it all and swim it back into the ocean, or into the beach from the ocean. But if you pan out from a different perspective, it doesn't seem all that overwhelming. And then you could say, okay, well, I'm going to decide what's going to be the best thing to do here. Maybe I'm going to get the boat first, and then I'm going to go collect the beach balls into the boat, and then I'm going to put this or that or the other that's floating around, and then I'm going to go into the shore, right? So when you look at things from a different perspective, you can often decrease the overwhelm. So let's talk about how first the thought patterns and your imagination contribute to magnifying overwhelm. Okay, so what this might look like for someone would be, let's say that you're a mom, you have a job, you have a partner, you have school activities for your kids and sports and things that you want to do, right? You have all these things, and there's a lot on your plate, right? Maybe you have a bunch of bills to pay, and you have other responsibilities around the house and things that you have to do, right? So if you write a list, you might have a significant list and be like, oh my gosh, this is way too much stuff for me to handle in the moment, right? Well, oftentimes it's not just the things that you have to do that are on your list, and it's not just like a matter of checking them off the list, but it's what you're thinking about that creates that sense of overwhelm and can make it worse. So if you're looking at that list and you're thinking about all the things that you have to do, and you have thoughts that come up, right? So I'd encourage you to ask yourself, what am I thinking when I look at all the things I have to do? What am I thinking when I look at this list of 50 things that I need to accomplish, right? And some of those beliefs that you're going to identify are going to be things that are in your subconscious mind. Again, these aren't things that are in like some deep, dark cave that you have to, or like hole that you have to dig up. They're pretty much going to be right there on the surface. So if you're looking at your list and you're like, okay, what am I thinking? What specifically am I thinking when I have all of this stuff on my plate? Think about exactly, specifically what's coming up for you. So let's try it now. If you have a massive list of responsibilities, what is it that's going through your head? Some of the things you might think about would be, I can't do it all by myself. Or this is too much to handle. Or I'll never get it done. Or I am incapable of handling all of this. I am going to have a panic attack, right? And the thing is, there is no right or wrong answer here. It's whatever you think, right? It's going to be different for me. So I'm rattling off the things that probably came up for me when I felt overwhelmed, but what's coming up for you? What specifically is coming up for you? And the important thing about this is not to judge the thoughts, right? Because if you're saying, if really in your subconscious it's, I can't do this by myself, if that is what's coming up for you, then put it down. Don't judge it and be like, well, I should be able to do all this stuff by myself. And I'm just, a loser if I can't handle this. And, I should be stronger, right? Whatever is coming up for you is fair game, and you need to include it, because if you're not working in the subconscious mind, you're not working in the 95% of what's driving the show that's causing you to feel overwhelmed. Because here's the thing, your subconscious beliefs come first. That's your programming from the day you were born. The subconscious beliefs are what drive the emotions, and the emotions, like overwhelm, are going to create behaviors like freezing up if you're overwhelmed, or not taking action because you just don't feel like it's even worth trying, could create things like self-sabotage, all these negative things, right? Anything that's happening in your subconscious mind is fair game. That's why I work in the subconscious mind, because that's where the power is, okay? So a lot of times people have a tendency to do what I call future predicting, and what they end up doing in future predicting is catastrophizing. So I think that's a word, catastrophizing. Yes, okay, I think that's the word. Anyway, I think you get what I'm saying. But what happens if you predict the future when you don't really know what the future is going to be is it fuels these feelings, again, of being overwhelmed, right? So if your thoughts that are coming up are predicting the future, those are fair game subconscious beliefs as well. So if you're thinking like everything's going to fall apart, I'm going to ruin everything, this is going to be a disaster, whatever it is, right? Any of those kind of future predicted thoughts that are coming up in your mind are fair game. And here's another thing to remember about your subconscious. Your subconscious mind doesn't know if something is real or imagined. It has no idea how to determine the difference, because in your mind it's all real. So if you're catastrophizing things and making future predictions that are doomsday scenarios for your life and what's going to happen, your brain thinks it's actually happening now. And that's why you start feeling overwhelmed too, because you have a physical response to the mental imagery and the thoughts that you're playing in your mind. So the more you feed that, the worse you're going to feel, right? Because your body and your brain want to keep you safe. So when your brain thinks something bad is happening, it's going to kick in your nervous system responses to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, whatever's needed, right? To help you in that moment. So as you're thinking about things, your brain thinks it's real, it's happening in real time. And then all of a sudden you have a rapid heart rate, or you are having trouble breathing or having chest pains, and all of a sudden you're in a full-blown panic attack, right? So think about overwhelm as a storm in your mind, right? Intense, but not necessarily grounded in reality, right? Like a tornado swirling in your mind, right? Yes, it feels real to you, right? But it's not grounded in reality. So your brain is such a powerful part of who you are, and it can help you or it can immobilize you, essentially. But you are actually in control. Your brain isn't in control. You just have to be aware of what's happening. So I'd really encourage you to challenge those thoughts when they start to creep in and they are these like doomsday scenarios and doomsday predictions, right? Question them, question the validity of those perceptions. Now, another important thing is like some people will feel very strong resistance to this, especially if you have been traumatized in your life, especially as a child, if you have had bad things happen to you a lot. And I want you to know and understand that I fully understand how scary it could be to let go of some of these future predictions, because as someone who has been traumatized in this way, that has been a strategy to keep you alive. That has been a strategy to keep you safe, right? If I think of all the different scenarios and all the different, doomsday options that could happen and all the bad things, right? Then I will feel fully prepared to deal with anything, right? So that's where a lot of times rumination comes in, and people say, well, yeah, I'm just thinking of all these horrible things that could happen, because guess what? If I think of 100 different scenarios of bad things, then if even one of those things happens, I'm ready for it and I'm going to be prepared. And there is something to be said for that, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't prepare for things, but there's a difference between preparing for actual real scenarios and knowing the difference in what is just a made up doomsday, catastrophize situation that can contribute to your own personal overwhelm. So if you're someone who can think of 100 scenarios and not get overwhelmed, then great. Good for you. That's not going to hurt you in any way. But if you're somebody who notices about yourself that you let these stories kind of run wild in your mind, and then that is what contributes to some of your overwhelm, then it's time to take a look at that and maybe start to challenge, are these beliefs and thoughts actually rooted in reality? Or could there be other possibilities? My favorite question is this absolutely true for 100% of people, 100% of the time? Is it? Right? That's one of my favorite questions. And my other favorite question is, what else is possible? You don't have to say what else is true. No, you say what else is possible. So if there are thoughts that are creeping up for you, especially if there are future kind of predicted things, then ask yourself those questions. Okay, so a couple of strategies to combat overwhelm would be number one, really being mindful in your life, okay? So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, and one of my favorite ways to be mindful is to be present, and start that by doing a body scan, sitting or lying down somewhere, doing some deep breathing exercises, and then just scanning your body and figuring out, where do you feel any sensations? Do you feel your heart beating fast? Do you feel like something sickly in your stomach? Do you feel a tingling in your toes? Like wherever, right? Like you have to be aware. And that all you're doing really is just bringing presence back to the now moment, right? Because if you're not in the now, you're in the past or you're in the present. Or I'm sorry, if you're not in the now, you're in the past, or you're in the future, you're not in the present. So, doing a body scan like this can be extremely helpful to get you back to the present moment, right? And that's also going to help you avoid things like a panic attack. Because if you're not breathing carefully and intentionally, and you are allowing your breath to get dysregulated, oftentimes that can be an open door for a panic attack, similar to what I was explaining earlier. You can do meditation if you're somebody who likes to meditate. That can be really, really helpful as well. And, staying present and focusing on like, what do I need to do right now? Like, what is the most important thing now that I have to do? And take all the other things off of your radar, right? Because so many times we're in the ocean, right? Like I was describing before, or you're looking at the 40 to 50 things on your list, right? Let's just eliminate all the things that we don't need to focus on right now and look at the one thing that we have to do now. What is that one thing we have to do? And focus on that, right? And that will make you feel better too, because you'll kind of eliminate the noise of all these other things that are floating around, but also because you can get it done, right? You're more likely to get something completed and finished when you're focused on it. If you are just thinking about, I just have 50 things I have to do, it's going to be harder to take action. Like, what is the most important thing? And let's focus on doing that. Okay, another thing that a lot of times people don't really think about helping themselves with overwhelm is boundaries. So if you're good at boundaries, this will be really helpful for you. If you're not so good at boundaries, then I would encourage you to do some subconscious work on what it is that's keeping you from being able to set boundaries and stick to them, because that's going to help with overwhelm as well. Because if you are not good at setting boundaries, you might be taking on more than you should be. Maybe you're saying yes to a lot of people because you feel guilty about saying no. And if that's the case, then of course you're going to be adding more stuff to your plate, right? If you have beliefs like, I can do it all, and like, I don't need help, and I can handle it, right? Like those kinds of things, actually you might think are good subconscious beliefs, but they could actually be things that keep you from setting boundaries that will contribute to overwhelm, right? So there's a lot of like moving parts when it comes to this stuff. That's why as a coach, that's what I do to help you unpack this stuff and get to the bottom of it, right? Let's get to the root. You might think you know what your initial subconscious belief is. There have been so many times I can't even tell you where myself and as I'm helping clients, we started in one spot and then, by the end of the session, we're in a completely different place, 4 or 5 layers deeper than what we thought we originally were at when we started. So having somebody like me who knows the ins and outs of the subconscious mind, areas of resistance, and is very familiar with this kind of work, can help you figure out not only like those surfacey subconscious beliefs, but what's beneath that surface, what's on a deeper level, right? To get you the shifts that you need. And then I would use my 4-step tool and process to help you. And I also use human design to get to some of your personal strengths and qualities and things that you should be utilizing to be the best version of yourself. So, but boundaries, again, that's going to help you protect your time, protect your energy, your emotional well-being. But if you struggle with that, again, I'm going to take you right back to the subconscious anyway. So, if you came to me and said, I'm struggling with overwhelm, we're going to figure out what those first layers are. And then we're going to figure out, well, are you taking on too much? And if so, why? Well, because you feel guilty about telling people no, and then you take on all these extra tasks and then you're completely overwhelmed, right? You see how that works? Like it's not as just cut and dry as what a lot of times people think. There's many, many different avenues, or it's kind of like a web, right, that we're untangling and trying to get to the root. So that's what I help people do. And then we retrain the neural pathways in your brain to make a new automatic so that overwhelm doesn't happen. Like I don't get overwhelmed anymore. I used to all the time, and I used to have panic attacks. Sometimes panic attacks from overwhelm, sometimes from other things like triggers, but I don't feel that overwhelm anymore. And I have a lot of stuff going on in my life. So there's definitely ways to manage this. Like I said, being very present in the present moment, and then, taking your task list and just focusing on one thing. You might even be able to take your tasks and put them into more manageable steps, or ask for help, or delegate to other people, things like that. But if there are subconscious beliefs that would keep you from doing that, we would want to figure that out too, because maybe you feel bad asking for help, or maybe you feel like you're a loser if you can't do it by yourself, or maybe you feel guilty asking your children to help you, or whatever. I don't know, right? But that's what I do to help you figure out the deeper layers here. So the other thing is just having somebody help you, right? Sometimes this stuff is really hard to do by yourself. Like, I am applauding you from over here. I am so happy you're listening and so happy you're trying to get this help. And in a lot of people, I actually have had a couple people who have messaged me and said, I follow along, I put this stuff on paper, I do exactly what you say, and I am actually starting to feel better. So if you are one of those people who are doing that and following along this podcast and you're getting these kinds of results, I applaud you, because I know that some people don't do that, and that's okay too, right? Everybody's on their own journey. But if you need that support and you need someone to help you and be there with you along the way, I'm your person, because that's exactly what I do. And I've been there, so I know a lot of these things and how it works. So I would love to support you if you need it. And that's normal, right? It's normal to ask for help. So don't feel like there's something wrong with you if you need help with these things. There's absolutely not. We all have our things, we all struggle, and that is totally okay. The purpose isn't to be better than other people. It isn't to exceed your own personal expectations. What the goal is to be the best version of you that you can, right? What is that version of you? Take away the comparisons of others, and what is it that's going to make you the best version of you? And overwhelm isn't it. I'm here to tell you, being overwhelmed is not going to make you a better version of yourself. It's probably just going to make you stressed, and it's probably just going to make you lash out or cry or be emotional in ways that really aren't going to impact your life in a positive way. So I want to help you impact your life in a positive way. All right, so one thing I want to mention here is that, because we're talking about emotions, is that overwhelm often masks underlying emotions like fear, anxiety, and insecurity. and I've sort of touched on this a little bit, but I'll just come right out and say it. Overwhelm isn't really, that's sort of the umbrella, right? But underneath of it is really these other emotional things, like fear that I'm not going to be able to accomplish these things, or that people are going to judge me, or anxiety about certain things, that something horrible is going to happen, maybe with those future predictions, insecurities about what you will make it mean and how you will feel about yourself if these things don't happen, right? So overwhelm starts in your mind. It is not about all the different things that are happening outside of you. So I know there's going to be people who are going, well, yeah, but if I didn't have all these overwhelming things happening, I wouldn't feel so overwhelmed. But I'm here to tell you, there can be two separate people with the same amount of responsibilities and the same amount of tasks. And one person could get completely overwhelmed by it, and another person could be totally fine. And that is only because of what's going on in each person's individual subconscious mind, right? So I don't want you to think that just because you have a lot on your plate that means you have to be overwhelmed. It absolutely does not mean that. There are action steps that you can take that will help decrease that, but ultimately, the way it's going to change the fastest and the most efficient is when you start at a subconscious level and figure out what it is that you're believing that's contributing to that. Okay? So exploring your own root causes that you would want to figure out starts with getting into awareness. Like, what am I thinking about when I'm feeling overwhelmed? What are the thoughts? And then address those beliefs and confront them, and don't judge them, right? Like, just be like a scientist and say, okay, well, I'm believing this. Well, is that true? And could there be other possibilities? And what else have I not really thought about here? And then you can also implement some of the other strategies, like the mindfulness and kind of chunking these tasks into smaller manageable steps, or asking for help, right? Things like that. There's other ways besides just the subconscious that you can actually take steps. But if you leave out the subconscious, then chances are it's just going to continue. It will just continue to be that way as long as you have X number of responsibilities or expectations that are in front of you. So ultimately, the thing that is going to be most important, as I'm always going to say, is the subconscious mind. There are other things that I help my clients with too that involve your human design. And if you're not familiar with human design, you can go to my website under the quick links and resources, free resources, and you can actually put in your birth information and get a readout of your human design. Now, I go much more in depth with my clients about their human design, because there are aspects of your human design that can contribute to things that could lead to you being more overwhelmed, or maybe you don't have as much access to immediate energy as other people, or motivation, right? There's a lot of different parts and pieces to this. So I can't ignore those things, right? That's you on an energetic and soul level. So not only are we working on the subconscious mind, but we're also working with your personal human design to help you live the best way possible, to help you have a life full of ease. And that is so, so very important. So again, if you haven't gotten your free chart, you can go out to my website at www.whentearsleavescars.com. And on the drop-down box, quick links and free resources, you can get your own personalized human design reading and read about that, and it might give you some insight as well. But like I said, that's kind of a high level reading, but I can give you way more detail and go into so much more of the unique parts and pieces to your design to help you in your life. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope that if you are feeling overwhelmed, that you'll reach out for help and support from whatever resources that you feel most aligned with. If you need a therapist or a pastor or a friend or a coach, someone like me, right? Anybody that you need help that you can reach out to, I would highly encourage you to do that. This is going to help you take control of your own mental well-being and your own emotional well-being. by challenging limiting beliefs and then implementing some of these practical strategies that I talked about. So if this has been helpful to you, or if you would like to work with me in my one-on-one program, you can go out to my website and fill out an application. That application will be what I use to determine if you are a good fit for my program, right? Because this is not just for anybody. These are intensive programs to help you be your best self. And I don't want to bring anybody in who wouldn't be ready for it. So that's what the application is for. It's totally free. You can fill it out. And then I'll just follow up with you within 48 hours to let you know what I think. And if I don't think that we would be a good fit together, I'll give you other tips, strategies, tools, and resources and what I feel like would be the most helpful for you. So if you have any feedback, suggestions, or ideas for other podcast episodes, please reach out to me in the DMs. I love to hear from my listeners. I'd love to know what you think about this episode. Seriously, I'm not just saying that. Like, I have a lot of friends on Instagram and Facebook, and I've never even met them in real life. So be my friend, come out there, message me. I'm happy to hear from you. I would love to know what's going on in your world, and I will talk to you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Be a Better You podcast.